fire doesn't spread, it devours. It roars like a wild beast, licking through every old wooden wall of the apartment, turning the hallway into a blazing red inferno. I ran through the thick smoke, my eyes stinging, my throat burning raw. "Michael!" I shouted, my voice hoarse, but only the fire answered, crackling, mocking. One room after another, I pushed the doors open, hands trembling, heart pounding violently. The living room was empty, the kitchen dark, the bedroom, no one. Then I turned, and through the shattered window, I saw him, Michael Reed, my husband, clutching a woman, Sophie Lane, as they rushed out of the building and jumped into a waiting yellow cab. He didn't look back, not once, not even to call my name. Just the two of them disappearing into the night, leaving me behind with the rising flames. Behind me, thick black smoke curled upward, and the glow of fire flickered through the cracks of the bedroom door, dancing like it was calling for me. I stood frozen, tears burning down my face, unable to put out the pain in my chest. My vision blurred, the world shrinking into orange and red streaks. The last thing I heard before losing consciousness was the faint ringing of a phone, somewhere beneath the ashes. Then, darkness swallowed everything. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in a hospital bed. My head spun, my body ached as if I had been run over by a truck. Sarah Jenkins, my best friend, sat beside me, eyes swollen red, yelling into her phone speaker, "Go to hell! Stop pretending to care. Ashley Harper is dead. You can have your dream girl and live happily ever after." Her voice trembled, raw with fury, slicing through the sterile air. "Michael called," I croaked, my voice rough. Sarah dropped the phone instantly and threw her arms around me, sobbing into the thin hospital gown. "Ashley, you scared me half to death. Thank God you're okay." I tried to smile, but my face burned as if it were still on fire, every tiny movement sending waves of pain through my skin. "Sarah, don't cry. He's not worth your tears." The words left my lips, but inside me, something cracked. A chain I hadn't known was binding me, finally breaking apart. Sarah wiped her cheeks and stared at me. "You knew he was trash, and you still stayed with him?" I exhaled deeply, the cold hospital air biting my lungs. "Sarah, I want to divorce Michael." She lifted her head, eyes wide in disbelief. Beneath the blanket, my hand clenched tight. I smiled, but the harder I smiled, the more the tears came, hot, stinging against my wounded skin. "He doesn't love me," I heard myself say it, calm and almost detached. "You're just realizing that now?" Sarah nearly shouted, then softened, squeezing my hand. I continued, my tone flat, like I was narrating someone else's story. "Yesterday, Sophie Lane's house caught fire, and the flames spread to ours. I had just stepped out of the shower when I noticed the smoke. I ran from room to room, looking for Michael, but he was already holding Sophie, running away. My heart twisted violently, but I kept going, as if speaking might dull the pain. He didn't even call my name once. My voice stayed steady, but the tear tracks on my face betrayed me. A burning building. Even a stranger would have shouted something, but he didn't. And I was his wife. I'd liked him for 7 years, loved him until I lost myself. But in the end, when he ran to save his life, he didn't remember me at all. Sarah's face turned scarlet with rage. "They wanted you dead. If you had died—" She stopped, seeing my burned face, and fumbled for tissues. "Don't cry, or it'll hurt your skin. Don't worry, I've been running my nail salon for 2 years now. I've saved up some money. We'll get you reconstructive surgery. You'll look even better than before." To ease her worry, I forced a crooked smile through the bandages. "Okay." Sarah wiped her tears too, and then she smiled, bright and fierce, like sunlight breaking through the clouds. In that moment, I knew, even if the fire had destroyed everything behind me, I still had Sarah. And I still had myself, reborn. Michael was my husband. We had only been married for 6 months, but before that, I had chased him for 7 long years. 7 years of unanswered messages, and countless nights spent wondering why I was so stubbornly holding on. I liked Michael, but he didn't like me. Everyone knew that Ashley Harper was the hopeless girl in love, and Michael Reed was the man forever chasing someone else's shadow. I chased him for 7 years, and he spent those same 7 years chasing Sophie. Sarah once got so angry she called us a pair of fools. Back then, I could still laugh and tell her, "I'm better than Michael." Sophie doesn't like him. Once he turns around, he'll see me. Until 2 years ago, when Sophie suddenly got married to a man she met through a blind date. Michael locked himself in his room for a week. When he finally came out, he looked exhausted, eyes red, and asked, "Do you want to be my girlfriend?" His face was pale, his voice flat, but in his eyes I saw something. Hope, maybe. Or maybe it was just my imagination. It felt like finding light in the dark, and without hesitation, I said yes, my heart pounding like a drum. For 2 years, without Sophie, he seemed to slowly accept me. A year later, I moved in with him. I cooked his favorite meals, washed his clothes, massaged his shoulders when he was tired. Then we met each other's parents, talked about marriage, and officially tied the knot 6 months ago. I thought life would stay that way forever. Until 3 months ago, when we moved into our new apartment on the outskirts of Seattle. The moment I saw our new neighbor, I knew I had lost. Completely. Sophie Lane stood there, smiling that familiar smile, waving at us. My heart dropped into a cold abyss. I asked Michael why we had to live right next to her, my voice trembling, trying to hold back the jealousy rising inside me. He lit a cigarette and said impatiently, "Ashley, you're overreacting. I bought this place ages ago. How would I know she'd move next door?" As he said it, his eyes darted away, refusing to meet mine. I knew he was lying, but I believed him anyway, because around him, I lost every bit of logic. I told myself it was just coincidence, that he was still mine. After that, everything looked the same, but everything felt different. He used to leave for work at 7:30, but now he left at 7. He said he needed to get ahead if he wanted a promotion. He used to drive me to work no matter the weather, but not anymore. He said he needed to focus on his career, on our future. He even asked if I could go home by myself, or if he should call me an Uber, his voice gentle, but distant. I smiled and said, "I can go by myself." 2 months ago, I started feeling something was wrong. That day, I ordered a new dinnerware set on Amazon. When I went to pick it up, Karen from the nearby store smiled and said, "Why didn't you ask your husband to get it for you?" "He was just here, and helped your neighbor carry a bunch of stuff, too." I couldn't tell if she was just being friendly or hinting at something. I carried the heavy box home, my shoulders aching, my chest heavy. Michael was on the couch playing Call of Duty, gunfire echoing through the room, the glow of the screen flickering across his face. His coat hung by the door, faintly scented with vanilla. I froze. Hearing the door open, he didn't even look up. "You're back? What's for dinner?" "I'm starving," he said lazily, as if everything was normal. My thoughts snapped back. I set the box down, the sound echoing through the quiet room, and asked calmly, "Did you help the neighbor carry her packages today?" I watched every twitch of his face, the slight lift of his brows, the press of his lips. "You spying on me now?" He looked up, his eyes flashing with irritation. "When did you become this kind of person?" His reaction was sharper than I expected. My jaw clenched, my temples throbbing. "Michael Reed," I said coldly, using his full name. His expression froze, like someone had hit pause. I changed my shoes, sat beside him, pretending everything was fine. "Why would I spy on you? Karen just mentioned you helped someone next door." "Yeah, I happened to see Sophie's packages while picking up mine, so I helped out," he said flatly, eyes still glued to the game, fingers tapping the controller. "Next time, just let me know, okay?" "Those boxes are heavy," I replied softly, trying to give him a way out, even though my heart ached. He wasn't surprised. He never was. Because no matter what he did, I always forgave him, played the quiet, obedient wife, the puppet in his hands. Sarah once said this love made me pathetic. She was right, and I was tired, so tired. "You're getting fat," he said casually. "Can't even lift a little box." "Next time, just leave the big stuff to me." That smile of his, mocking, cruel, cut straight through me. Later, I learned there was a word for it: gaslighting. That's exactly what it was. I'm 5'6", 121 pounds. Not fat, not even close. But his words were poison, making me doubt myself. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked to the bedroom. Behind me, Michael called out, "Ashley, I'm hungry." Go make dinner for the first time in my life. I didn't want to. The faint scent of vanilla still lingered. My fingers tightened around my phone. How close did they have to be for her perfume to cling to him like that? Hugging? Or worse? I couldn't stop my mind from spiraling, couldn't hold back the anger. But beneath the rage, there was only emptiness. Loving someone who doesn't love you, there's really no meaning in that at all. I unlocked my phone, my finger swiping quickly across the screen, ordering a tiny Ring camera. Outside, Michael must have gotten impatient from waiting too long, because he came over and opened the bedroom door. "Ashley." "What's wrong?" His eyes flicked over me fast, as if checking whether I was angry. I turned around and gave him a small smile. "I'm just a little tired today." "Why don't we order takeout?" I said softly, but my hand under the blanket tightened around my phone. Michael frowned, staring at me for a long moment, the familiar crease forming between his brows, and finally said, "All right, but don't eat out too much." "You're starting to get a little belly fat, you know." His words cut like knives. His hand brushed lightly against my shoulder, but the touch made my skin crawl. I placed a hand on my stomach, and suddenly a thought flashed through my mind, sharp as lightning in a storm. "What if I'm pregnant?" I asked. "No way!" Michael blurted out immediately, as if the very idea was a nightmare. I stared at him, my voice calm. "Why not?" I asked again, evenly, though my heart was pounding, waiting. He didn't answer. Instead, he ran a shaky hand through his hair, muttering under his breath, before turning and slamming the door behind him. The next day, the camera arrived. I installed it right outside our door, adjusting the angle until it perfectly captured the narrow space between our apartment and the neighbors. When everything was done, my phone rang. It was the familiar tone, Michael's name flashing on the screen. I answered. "Ashley, I have to work late tonight. Don't wait up," he said quickly, his voice clipped, like he was hiding something. "Aren't we supposed to have dinner with your parents tonight?" I asked, trying to sound calm, though suspicion was already rising inside me. Something came up. "Go without me," he replied shortly and hung up, without another word. As I set the phone down, that faint vanilla scent brushed past my nose again. I searched for John Davis, Michael's coworker, and called. Johnny, are you guys working overtime tonight? I asked lightly, though my chest felt tight. No, he said, sounding puzzled. Then silence. The smile on my lips faded, replaced by the ache spreading through me. Even someone as oblivious as Johnny could sense something was wrong. Ashley, you too, he stammered. I let out a soft laugh. It's fine. Sorry to bother you, Johnny. I hung up. My mind went blank, like I'd fallen into a void. Then a thought surfaced. Divorce. The word itself startled me. Since I was 18, my dream had been to marry Michael, to have a warm home, shared meals, a future together. And now I wanted to leave him, to finally escape this endless cycle of pain. I opened my Chase Bank app, my fingers trembling as I entered the password. For years, I had been paying off Michael's credit card bills until 3 months ago, when he suddenly took it back. Maybe I could still see his transaction history. The thought struck me, and I scrolled through the recent charges. The results on the screen made my eyes widen, my heartbeat stop for a second. From Taylor Swift concert tickets to Louis Vuitton bags and jewelry, he had spent over $30,000 in just 3 months, more than half a year's salary. Yet not a single item was for me. For the past 6 months, I'd been covering all the household expenses on my own, while he'd been wasting his money playing the fool for someone else. We were both fools, really. I was foolish for loving blindly, and he was foolish for chasing something that was never his. The most recent transaction was just 10 minutes ago. The payment went to a luxury jewelry store, where even the cheapest bracelet cost at least 2 months of his salary. This time, he'd spent $8,000. I sat there in the dark room, the only light coming from my phone screen, my fingers scrolling through contacts, while my heart still pounded from the shock of those spending numbers. Sarah, can you help me contact a lawyer? I asked, my voice in my head sounding tired but firm. Sarah replied quickly, sending a number with a message. What's going on? Someone giving you trouble? My fingers trembled slightly as I typed back. No, I just want to ask about marital asset division, she responded. What's there to ask? I told you to sign a prenup back then, but you didn't listen. She was still lecturing me when someone called her from the other side, and she hurriedly hung up. I added the lawyer on chat and got straight to the point. I wanted a divorce. The lawyer asked what my demands were, his tone cold but efficient. I hesitated for a moment, biting my lip under the desk lamp, then typed a single line. Can I claim back the money my husband spent buying gifts for another woman? The money I'd spent on Michael, I didn't count. That was the price I paid for my own foolishness. But if he wanted to be generous to another woman, then he should pay a price too. I didn't go to Michael's parents' house for dinner. Honestly, they'd never liked me, always throwing cold looks and snide remarks about that lovesick girl. When they heard Michael was busy, they immediately said to reschedule. So I went to the Space Needle restaurant alone. I wanted a proper meal. Now that I'd come to my senses, I thought, well, this is still marital property anyway, so why should I feel guilty spending it? I'd saved for so long, every dollar meant to go toward a new car, but that money had ended up as jewelry on another woman's body. I pointed at the 5 most expensive dishes on the menu and said to the waiter, trying to keep my tone steady, I'll have all of these. The meal cost me $1,000. I ate with both pain and determination. When I looked up, surrounded by candlelight and murmured laughter in the elegant restaurant, I suddenly saw a familiar figure. Michael, holding a bouquet of deep red roses, walking toward a table not far away. I watched him hand the flowers to Sophie, then take out a sparkling bracelet and fasten it around her wrist. his fingers brushing her skin tenderly. I tried to keep my eyes open to see what that $8,000 bracelet looked like, but I couldn't. My vision blurred as hot tears rolled down my cheeks. Thankfully, the large potted plant beside me hid my pathetic state, its thick leaves like a curtain, giving me the last shred of dignity in this glittering place. The waiter noticed my shaking shoulders and asked nervously, "Miss, are you choking?" His voice was full of concern, napkin in hand, ready to help. I shook my head, wiping my tears with the back of my hand. "No, it's just, the food is really good." Yes, delicious. So good it made my heart shatter. It was the first time in my life I'd ever eaten such an expensive meal, but the bitter taste of betrayal overpowered everything. I forced down the last spoonful of lobster bisque. The salt of my tears blending into the soup, tightened my old coat around me, and left the restaurant. Behind me, Michael's voice rose in song, singing Happy Birthday to Sophie. His tone was warm, and the pianist in the corner accompanied him perfectly, the cheerful notes echoing through the room. The waiter escorted me to the door, bowing politely. "We look forward to seeing you again." I nodded slightly in response, but only I knew I would never come back. Places that don't belong to you will never feel like home, no matter how hard you try to fit in. The same goes for people. If they're not yours, you can never make them stay. After coming back, I immediately applied for an out-of-town assignment. The company was short-staffed for a project in Boston, so they sent me there right away. That night, Michael came home very late. I lay on the bed, pretending to be asleep. The fact that he even came home surprised me a little. It seemed that no matter how many gifts or surprises he gave, he still hadn't managed to win over his true love. Early the next morning, while he was still fast asleep, I picked up my suitcase and left. The business trip was only supposed to last a month, but to me, it felt like being reborn. For the first time, I realized that the world without Michael could be this beautiful. I could eat whatever I wanted, wear whatever I wanted, without caring about his preferences anymore. I bought a camisole I'd always liked, styled my hair into soft beach waves, and let myself live freely in a city where no one knew my name. A month passed in the blink of an eye. On my way home, I sat staring at my phone screen, absent-mindedly scrolling through the footage from the camera by my front door. I had been gone for 30 days, but the two of them had been coming in and out of my apartment the entire time. From the careful distance at the start, to casual hugs, and finally to open kisses, they didn't even bother to hide. I thought I would be heartbroken, but surprisingly, I didn't feel that dull ache anymore. I even wanted to text Michael a message of congratulations. He had finally gotten the woman he loved. I rubbed my chin, wondering, maybe this time he would be the one to ask for a divorce. The thought made me smile, and a mischievous idea crossed my mind. I sent him a text. "Honey, I'm coming home today." At that moment, Michael was too busy, wrapped up in his sweet little fantasy with the woman in his arms, to even notice the buzz of his phone. When I walked into the apartment, he was sitting on the couch playing Call of Duty. He had his mic on, speaking in a gentle tone I'd never heard before. "Sophie, hold my hand. Watch out for the jungler." I looked up at him. Our eyes met. He looked a bit surprised by my new appearance, but said nothing. I set my luggage by the door and said calmly, "I'm going to shower." The water ran over my hair, washing away the exhaustion of travel. I stood under the stream, thinking about when I should have the real conversation with him. Divorce was inevitable, but I would never let him be the one to bring it up first. The footage from the camera had already been downloaded and sent to my lawyer. A month's worth of evidence, more than enough. As I was drying my hair and stepping out of the bathroom, I noticed that Michael, who had been in the living room, was gone. Suddenly, a burning smell hit my nose. Smoke seeped through the cracks in the door. I froze, then quickly called 911, soaked a towel, and shoved it into the door gaps. "Michael! Fire!" I shouted. No response. I frowned, checking room after room, the bedroom, the study, the living room. All empty. I grabbed my phone and called him. The ringtone rang over and over, but no one answered. When I looked up through the window, I saw him. He was outside, holding a woman in his arms, the $8,000 bracelet gleaming on her wrist. He ran so fast he dropped one of his shoes. But he didn't look back, not once. He hailed a taxi and disappeared. I stood there, frozen. I knew he didn't love me, that in his heart, I was worth less than one smile from Sophie. But I had never imagined that, in the face of life and death, he would abandon me, someone who had been with him for 7 years, without a second thought. The smoke filled my lungs, jolting me back to reality. The place was burning. I had to think of a way to survive, or I really would die. I had to live to make them pay. I tried everything I could think of, even searching online for ways to escape a fire, following every instruction I could find. But the flames only grew bigger, devouring everything around me. I crouched in the corner, pressing a wet towel to my mouth and nose, but my mind started to fade. Right before I blacked out, I thought I heard the ring of a phone, followed by the wailing of distant sirens. The firefighters pulled me out, but by the time they arrived, the blaze was already massive. I lived on the 13th floor. Rescue was nearly impossible. I suffered burns over 20% of my body. My new hairstyle was gone, my face disfigured, but I was alive. Sarah was furious, insisting she'd take me for reconstructive surgery, but I told her, "You can take me, but I won't use your money." Her face darkened instantly. The knife in her hand stabbed deep into the apple she was peeling. She slammed it down on the table, then stood in front of me, glaring. "Ashley, what's that supposed to mean? You think I'd charge you interest or something?" I gave a faint smile, my eyes cold. "They did this to me." "Of course they'll pay," Sarah froze, then silently sat down and continued peeling the apple. After a long pause, she said softly, "I know you've been through hell. I used to be angry at you for being stuck in that hole you couldn't climb out of. But seeing you now, it hurts even more." She sighed. "Still, it's good. You're stronger now. You're protecting yourself. Life is long. You'll be okay." I took a bite of the apple, staring at the uneven peel, feeling a quiet ache inside. Then I whispered, "Sarah." She raised her hand to stop me. "Don't say anything pointless. Just tell me, what's the plan? I'll help." I told her about my plan to file for divorce and sue Michael for asset division. "It's not over," she said firmly. "That woman will pay too, for your medical bills, your lost income, and every bit of damage she caused." Sarah stood by my hospital bed, arms crossed, analyzing the situation with cool precision. "Don't worry, not a single cent will be left unpaid. This time, it wasn't just my apartment that burned. 2 units above were damaged too. Even if Sophie sold everything she owned, she could never repay the debt." I wondered, would my husband step up and cover it for her? While we were talking, my phone started ringing again. Seeing the name on the screen, I picked up and said coldly, "Calling me at this hour? Are you just checking to see if I'm dead yet?" On the other end, Michael's voice sounded tired. "Ashley, can you stop making a scene?" I'm exhausted. The fact that I was still alive tired him out. The anger I'd buried for so long flared in an instant. "Oh, my being alive makes you tired. Then why bother calling? You didn't seem tired when you carried Sophie down 13 floors. Can you stop already?" "Sophie sprained her ankle, so I took her to the hospital. What was I supposed to do? When did you become so petty?" His voice was full of irritation. All I felt inside was a cold emptiness. "You're right. I almost died, and she only sprained her ankle. I'm the unreasonable one here." Michael, unwilling to argue further, cut me off. "Sign the withdrawal papers and drop the lawsuit. Let's just end this." "Where are you now?" "Withdraw the lawsuit?" I repeated. "For Sophie? She didn't mean to do it. The phone charger just caught fire." I listened as he rushed to defend Sophie, said nothing, and hung up. Withdraw the lawsuit? He really had the nerve to say that? Without hesitation, I blocked his number and deleted every trace of him from my social media. Sarah noticed the look on my face and asked, "What did that bastard say to you this time?" I told her everything. The moment she finished listening, she grabbed her bag and stormed out of the hospital room. "That son of a bitch!" I looked up at her and smiled faintly. "Tell me, do you think Sophie's husband will take our side?" "Do you even have to ask?" Sarah sneered. "He's been cheated on, drowning in debt. This is worse than a Hollywood tragedy." I nodded slowly. In the past, even though I knew Michael's heart always belonged to Sophie, I never blamed her. It wasn't her fault someone loved her. She was simply better than me. But after seeing that footage of them hugging, kissing, if she didn't care for Michael, she should have never given him a chance. During the fire, she let him carry her down the stairs without lifting a finger to help anyone else. She didn't even bother to warn the neighbors. That day, we were lucky the apartments above and below were empty. Otherwise, the consequences would have been catastrophic. The most pitiful person in all of this was her husband, betrayed and now forced to shoulder an enormous debt. I asked my lawyer to arrange a meeting with Sophie's husband, David Wilson. I'd met him a few times before. He wasn't as handsome as Michael, but he was taller, neatly dressed, and came from a respectable middle-class family. Otherwise, Sophie wouldn't have married him so quickly after that dating event years ago. He often traveled for work, unintentionally giving Michael the chance to pursue his wife. "Ashley Harper?" he asked, his eyes showing a flicker of surprise at the sight of my bandaged body. I nodded. He said quietly, "I didn't realize your injuries were this serious." I sighed, offering a faint smile. "Thanks to your wife." He fell silent. I took out my tablet and slid it across the table. "Watch this first. Then we'll talk." The video had been edited and sped up. 5 minutes long, summarizing a month of intimate moments between them. I thought David would explode in anger after seeing it. But he was calmer than I expected. So calm it unsettled me. "David, you're not angry?" I asked. He looked up briefly, his tone steady. "Compared to you, I suppose I'm not the one suffering the most." I said nothing. Thinking about the massive compensation he'd have to pay, I couldn't even bring myself to feel angry anymore. I hadn't told him about my plan to sue Sophie, but he wasn't stupid. Just looking at my condition, he could tell I wasn't about to let things go. He handed back the tablet and said evenly, "If you want to charge your husband with adultery, this evidence isn't enough." I stared at him, stunned. "After all this, you can still tolerate it?" David stood, his voice low and steady. "Ashley, whether I tolerate it or not doesn't matter. What matters is that no judge will rule it adultery based on that footage alone." He paused, then added quietly, "Still, thank you for telling me." I have to go, he was right. The level of intimacy in the video wasn't enough to prove an affair. Over the past month, they had never spent the night at each other's homes, except for the night of the fire. My lawyer told me that the evidence we already had was sufficient for a clean divorce and assured me not to worry. But I knew better. If I wanted to reclaim every cent that belonged to me, I had to prove that Michael truly cheated. At this point, I was like a Sherlock Holmes detective, meticulously digging through all of Michael and Sophie's social media accounts, and I didn't even skip their mutual friends. In the end, I found a photo posted a month ago, right when I was on my business trip in Boston. A mutual friend had uploaded it with the caption, "After 3 years apart, today felt like stepping back into the past." In the photo, everyone was raising their glasses, and Michael and Sophie were standing close together, Michael's eyes fixed intently on her. I immediately checked the posting date, July 2nd, 2022. Instinctively, I opened the camera footage at my front door. Sure enough, there was nothing of the two of them that day. I then logged into Michael's Chase bank account. Luckily, he still hadn't changed the password. Unfortunately, there were no unusual transactions that day. Had I misunderstood him? Or was it Sophie who paid that day? I frowned and focused. Suddenly, I remembered one of Michael's habits. When booking hotels or flights, he often paid through Apple Wallet. Now that things between us had completely fallen apart, there was no way to secretly check his phone. What should I do? My eyes drifted across the Apple Wallet interface, and my mind started calculating. Until I saw the points section. Hotel points? I decided to try my luck, opened his rewards history, and checked each transaction. He never paid attention to this stuff, so there were almost no points to collect. But when I scrolled to July 3rd, I found that more than 100 points were deducted that day. Based on the conversion rate, that meant the day before, his points had to be at least over 200. I quickly pinned down the location of the restaurant where they had dinner, drew the widest radius between their two offices, and identified the best hotel within that area. 90%. They spent the night there. With Michael's personality, there's no way he would let his mistress sleep in a cheap hotel. But to have solid proof, I needed the hotel's security footage. Of course, the hotel wouldn't easily disclose guests' private information. This would have to go through the lawyer. That day, I officially filed for divorce with the court. My attorney also filed a motion for discovery. But it still wasn't over. I turned to Sarah and asked, "Two people kicked out of their homes, broken both love and money. Do you think they're hugging each other for comfort right now?" Toi vua hoi thame, juak jia chi cho o hien tai kua Michael. This address was given to me by Johnny Davis, Michael's coworker. He still thought Michael and I were only upset with each other because of that overtime thing the other day. 2 months after my second reconstructive surgery, the private investigator finally gathered all the evidence of what Michael and Sophie had done during that time and sent it to me. I immediately forwarded everything to my lawyer. That day, while I was in physical therapy, Sarah burst into the room, grinning from ear to ear, and shouted excitedly, "Ashley, Sophie's getting divorced!" I wasn't surprised at all, just replied calmly, "He got betrayed just like I did. Divorce was bound to happen." Sarah smirked and added slyly, "I heard they're fighting over child custody now." Their lives must be a total mess. I couldn't help but laugh. Then let's make it even more interesting. I'll sue Sophie today. After everything I've endured because of that fire, someone has to be held responsible. I authorized my lawyer to file a lawsuit against Sophie for arson and emotional damages, and the court quickly accepted the case. At the same time, I also received a summons for the divorce hearing with Michael. The scars on my body hadn't fully healed yet. I found them hideous, so half of me was still wrapped in bandages. But no matter what, I decided to go to court. During the trial, I saw Michael for the first time in a long while. His eyes glanced past me toward the door, his face restless and impatient. I knew he didn't recognize me. It wasn't until Sarah wheeled me to the plaintiff's seat that Michael's pupils suddenly constricted, his face turning pale, as if all the blood had drained from it. I never thought there would come a day when I'd face Michael in court, but at that moment, I felt lighter than I ever had before. The divorce and asset division went far more smoothly than I expected. The evidence I had was undeniable. The footage from my door camera, along with the photos and videos collected by the private investigator, captured every intimate moment between the two of them in detail. In the end, the court granted the divorce and ruled that the shared assets be divided 60-40 in my favor, since Michael had spent marital funds on his mistress, and the money he used to buy jewelry for Sophie would be deducted from his share. Furthermore, because of my severe injuries and inability to care for myself, Michael was ordered to pay me $1,000 a month in nursing support. Leaving the courthouse, the chilly Seattle air slipped through my thin coat. I sat in the wheelchair as Sarah gently pushed from behind. Suddenly, Michael stepped in front of us, his eyes flickering with hesitation and a trace of guilt. "Ashley." I immediately raised my hand to stop him from speaking further, staring straight into his eyes. The same eyes that once made me fall in love, now filled only with exhaustion. And said firmly, my tone cold and deliberate, "Michael, Just say what you came to say." He frowned, the crease between his brows deepening. "I just wanted to check on you," he said, his voice soft and insincere, his hands shoved into his pockets, his feet shifting uneasily against the ground. I had spent nearly 5 months in the hospital, enduring endless nights of pain and burned flesh, and my heart had long turned to ice. Nothing he did could stir any feeling in me now. Even hearing that weak tone in his voice evoked nothing, only indifference. I let out a small, crooked smile on my scarred face and replied slowly, "As you can see, I'm doing great." My voice was flat, emotionless, my gaze fixed on him as if he were a stranger. Hearing the sarcasm in my tone, Michael's expression tightened, his face flushing red as his voice rose with irritation. "Why did you become like this? Wasn't it you who chased after me first?" His words cut deep, dragging up years of misguided devotion. But now they only made me smile faintly. I curved my lips into a bitter smile and spoke evenly. "Yes, I was the one who pursued you first. Back then, you liked Sophie, but at least you knew how to keep your distance from me. I once thought you were a decent man." I paused, my tone colder now. "Later, when Sophie got married, you proposed to me. I thought you had finally moved on from her. But you see, you could keep your distance from every other woman, except her." I stopped, staring straight into his eyes, and asked, each word deliberate and steady, "Michael, do you know what that's called?" He froze, his face stiff, blinking rapidly, as if my words had pierced straight through him. I tilted my head slightly, gave a faint smile, and continued, my voice sharp and calm. "It's called selfishness. Do you actually love her? Number. You only love yourself, all that goodness you showed her. It wasn't love. It was just your obsession with something you could never truly have." When I finished, I withdrew my gaze and turned to Sarah, who stood beside me, gripping the wheelchair handles tightly, her eyes glaring at Michael with open disgust. "Sarah, let's go," I said softly. She nodded, said nothing, and quietly pushed me away, leaving him standing there in silence. In the days after the divorce trial, I returned to the hospital to prepare for my third reconstructive surgery. The scarred skin still burned every time I touched it, but inside, I felt calm, like a lake finally settling after a storm. One afternoon, while I was checking my doctor's schedule on my phone, the screen suddenly lit up. A strange number, but when I answered, the voice was familiar. It was Michael. His voice trembled, hoarse and unsteady. "Ashley, I regret everything," he said, as if those words could erase the fire, the scars, and the betrayal. I almost laughed. I stayed silent for a few seconds, my fingers tightening around the phone, eyes drifting toward the window. The Seattle rain was falling softly, drops sliding down the glass. Then I spoke slowly, my tone even but cutting cold. "Michael, do you have any idea what it feels like to have burns over 20% of your body? Even if you plunged your arm into boiling water, you still wouldn't understand. I'm tired. Don't call me again." When I finished, I hung up without hesitation. I knew that would probably be the last call from him. The lawyer had just informed me that Sophie's trial was scheduled for today, and I was about to go into surgery. Lying on the operating table, bright lights glaring above me, the faint murmur of doctors, and the sharp scent of anesthesia filling the room, my mind drifted back to that day. The fire, the black smoke, and Michael's back as he disappeared with Sophie. And just as expected, the trial ended with a clear verdict. Michael was found guilty of emotional damages and ordered to pay $10,000 in compensation. Sophie, convicted of severe arson, was sentenced to 3 years in prison. The total compensation for property loss, medical expenses, and emotional distress came to $500,000, for which Sophie bore primary responsibility. If, on that day, after the fire broke out, Sophie hadn't panicked and fled, if she hadn't let Michael carry her down 13 floors without once looking back, maybe things wouldn't have turned out this way. But life doesn't deal in what-ifs. Once a fire burns, there's no going back. Because of her conviction, custody of their child was granted to David. Out of courtesy, he even sent me a fruit basket. When he visited me, dressed neatly in his suit but with tired eyes, he gave a faint, wry smile and said, "When a woman decides to be ruthless, it's truly terrifying." His voice carried a touch of bitterness as he leaned casually against the doorframe, hands in his pockets. I didn't respond. After all, who doesn't wish to live freely and innocently? But if you don't want to be stepped on, there's only one choice left. Learn how to stand on your own. 2 years later, I stood in front of the mirror in my new apartment. My face, after several surgeries, had almost fully healed, the skin on my cheeks smooth again, though my eyes were now deeper, carrying stories that words could never tell. The scars on my body were still there, faint red marks that would never truly fade, so I could no longer wear the tank tops and shorts I once loved. Instead, I chose a light blue dress, the soft silk fabric draping gently around me, with short sleeves that covered the traces of the past, like a quiet whisper of comfort. I sat at my vanity, fingers brushing through the soft waves of my hair. New curls, tousled like the ocean breeze in Boston years ago, a reminder of the first time I started to find myself again. Holding the comb, I slowly ran it through each strand, feeling them slip between my fingers. And in the mirror, a woman looked back at me, not the lovesick girl who once trembled for Michael, but a new Ashley, calm and free. I smiled, a gentle, easy smile, no longer forced, no longer heavy with pain, only acceptance. Life, I realized, was never just about love. All those years chasing after Michael, I had lost too much. My career, my friends, my connections. Now, I wanted to reclaim them. I returned to work, to meetings that were long and tiring, but full of energy, a new beginning. Old relationships slowly reconnected, fragile threads weaving back into a net strong enough to hold me. Every morning, I made coffee in my small kitchen, the steam rising from a white porcelain cup, the rich aroma filling the air. I sat by the window, watching the quiet street outside, the trees swaying gently in the wind, thinking about everything that had happened, the fire, the smoke, the tears. But now they were just memories, fading into the background. Maybe someday, when I am confident enough, independent enough, when I can stand firm in this world with a heart that no longer fears, if I meet someone right, someone who will walk beside me to the end, not to fill a void, but to share the sunny days, then let it happen when the time is right. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, feeling freedom expand in my chest. Life, like the ocean, will keep moving forward, and I, like a small boat, have learned to glide along the waves without fear.